Установки. 1,5 года назад, выступая на Давос, Соединенные Штаты, провозгласив победу в холодной войне, объявили себя посланниками Господа на земле, у которых нет никаких обязательств, а есть только интересы. Причем эти интересы объявляются священными.
Did the ancient Chinese worship one God, the true God of the Bible? And do kanji characters, their written language, describe him as a trinity? So, did the ancient Chinese worship Jehovah, the same God worshipped by the ancient Jews in Israel? Were the Chinese monotheists? And did their written language, the pictograph kanji characters, support this? That's what we're talking about today, and we're starting right now. This is the second video in a series about the truths in the book of Genesis and how they may be the basis of many of the pictograph kanji characters. A link to that first episode that explains the topic is at the end of the video and found down in the description. Now, the historic evidence implies that the ancient Chinese were in fact a remnant group that separated from the rest of mankind at the Tower of Babel, just like all languages were separated. And that the meaning of the kanji characters that they developed after that give us a look into the beliefs and practices of these very early post-flood peoples. That after the Tower of Babel separation, they traveled east and settled in the land we now call China 4,300 years ago. And that when they settled there, they created a written language based on pictographs, and those pictographs were based on what they knew, which were the oral stories passed down about the events in Genesis, the creation, the fall, the flood, the Tower of Babel, and about the nature of the God they worshipped, who they called Shangtai, or the Heavenly Emperor. It is probably shocking to hear that Chinese were monotheists, unlike most other ancient peoples who worship, many gods. This is probably doubly hard to believe because China is the home of three great religions: Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism, none of which are monotheist, but our doubts are based on what we see right now. 4,300 years removed from the initial migration of the Chinese from a region in the Middle East. These three great pagan religions of Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism are newcomers on the world scene compared to that 4,300 years ago, only being a little more than 2,000 to 2,500 years old. In order to learn about the ancient Chinese, we need to go back much further, over 2,000 years earlier. Back to the days when the ancient Chinese had an oral tradition passed down to them from the original patriarchs, Adam, Noah, Shem. These patriarchs who had lived through the events of Genesis, and although the Tower of Babel occurred nearly 1,700 years after the creation, this was only 3 lifetimes. Adam to Methuselah, Methuselah to